Hey guys, today I wanted to talk to you about how to play violin finger patterns. So this is something that is extremely important for a beginner violinist. And if you're an adult beginner on the violin, this is going to be one of the best ways to progress more quickly and be able to learn more songs more quickly. Basically, you want to think of finger patterns as the building blocks of making music on the violin. There really are 4 basic finger patterns that you can learn to play on every single one of the violin strings. So you have 4 different strings. You can play these 4 different patterns on each of the 4 strings, and that's going to give you 16 different patterns for your fingers that will then allow you to play all different types of music with whatever arrangement of fingers that you need for those different songs. I do want to show you this little tool that I have hooked onto my violin here. This is a tuner. When you hook the tuner onto your violin right here, it has like a little attachment and you can adjust it to the width of your violin. Then when you play any note, it's going to tell you, like for example, let me see if I can kind of show you here. If I play the A string, you can see how it's in that green zone there, so you know that the A is in tune. So first of all, it's a great tool for, of course, tuning your violin because it can tell you if your E string, A string, D string, G string are in tune. But also when you play other notes, let me show you if I put finger 1. So it's going to show you, okay, you're on B, and it'll show you if you're a little high, a little low, or exactly where you are in terms of that note. You do want to be careful with this because you do not want your tuner to become a crutch where you lean on it too heavily. But if you're just getting started, it could be helpful to double check, make sure you're really on the right note, and also to help train your ear to hear what each note is supposed to sound like. So that's one tool I just want you to be aware of. If you would like to try it out, I'm going to link that down below for you so that you can just check it out there. Another thing that a lot of beginner violinists will do is they will put finger tapes, which are like the little thin stickers that wrap beneath the strings on the fingerboard, and they place them at the first main finger pattern that I'm going to teach you, which is the major finger pattern. That's where you'll put the finger tapes. Again, this tuner could come in handy to make sure you know exactly where the finger tapes should go. But I just want to let you know those 2 resources because if you really are learning on your own and you maybe don't have an in-person teacher to learn from, making sure that your fingers are in tune is extremely important as you're learning the basics of violin. It's one of the most important things that you can do at the beginning is making sure that your fingers truly are falling in the correct spots and that you're learning the correct finger patterns. Ultimately, you really want to train your ear to hear what each pattern is supposed to sound like. And you always want to be listening when you're playing the violin and adjusting your fingers if they need to move a little bit up or a little bit down. Up means you're moving towards your face, moving higher on the string, and down means that you'd be moving towards the tuning pegs down here. That would be moving lower. And so constantly as you're practicing, you want to be listening closely and making the little teeny adjustments that you may need to make to be really, really in tune. I would recommend, if you're a complete beginner, to combine finger tapes with using a tuner to really get in tune and to place your finger tapes in the proper spots. Now with the finger patterns, we're going to put together different combinations of whole steps and half steps. Now, if you're not familiar with what whole steps and half steps are in music, half steps is the closest interval of movement that you can have. So let me give you a quick example of what a half step would be. So those would be half steps moving up. And then if I were to move downwards with half steps, I can just go back down the same way I came up. On the violin, typically what half steps are going to look like is that your fingers will be very, very close to each other. Like here's finger 1 and finger 2 in a half step. They're usually very close together or touching, or sometimes I call it hugging because it's like they're close together. They're not on top of each other, but they're close together. The higher that you go on your violin, the closer the half steps will be. So your fingers will be touching closer, closer, closer for your half steps as you go up on the violin. Now, a whole step is 2 half steps put together. So as you can imagine, when you're playing a whole step on the violin, it'll be a little bit farther apart than a half step would be. Now here's how a whole step would sound on the violin. I'm starting on the A string here. So those are all whole steps going up. Do you see how my fingers are placed not close together hugging anymore, but it's two of those apart. And so they're a little bit farther placed, but they're still close together. Now, if I moved downward in that same whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step. So we're gonna start with the first main pattern. If you are just getting started with finger patterns, this is the one to get started with. So this one is known as the major finger pattern. So the major finger pattern follows this whole step, half step pattern. It goes whole step, half step, whole step. When you're starting out with a finger pattern, you'll always start on an open string. And today for this video, I'm going to be using the A string to demonstrate. Once you master finger patterns on the A string, then you can move to the D string, the E string, and the G string. Here's how the major finger pattern would look on the A string. And you start with the open string first, so you'll play open A, and then we'll place our fingers down with a whole step, half step, whole step pattern. After I play it up and down one time, then I will give you the note names for what those would be on your A string as well. So it's a whole step from the open to the one. So you see how there's a little bit of a space between the here and here. Then there's a whole step between 1 and 2, like this. Then 2 and 3 are right next to each other because that's where the half step is. And so you can see how they're basically touching. And then there's another whole step between 3 and 4 right here. So here's how the pattern kind of looks underneath your fingers. If you're putting fingertips down on your violin, this is the exact pattern. So the note names on the A string would be A, B, C sharp, D, and E. Now moving on to our second finger pattern. The second finger pattern is going to follow something very similar, but this time instead of 2 and 3 being right next to each other, it's going to be finger 1 and finger 2. And then there'll be a whole step between 2 and 3 and a whole step between 3 and 4. This one is known as the minor finger pattern. The note names for that one on the A string are A, B, C, D, and E. Now, if you have finger tapes down on your violin in the major pattern, all of them would be on the tapes except for this guy right here. This is considered what we call a low finger 2. And so your sticker would be falling where it had been before right here, but your finger 2 on the minor pattern will be down just a little bit. We're gonna move on to the third finger pattern. So the third finger pattern, our finger 3 is going to be higher, and it's going to be touching finger 4. There's not exactly a name for this one, but this has an augmented fourth in it, which just means that the fourth note, instead of being in its lower spot, is augmented or raised, going higher. And so we call that an augmented fourth. So the pattern is whole, 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 half. Kind of a unique sounding one. So the note names of that one on the A string are A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. Now for the fourth pattern, I'm going to teach you what we call the whole tone pattern. Everything is going to be whole steps here. And so from open to 1 whole step, 1 to 2 whole step, 2 to 3 whole step, and then 3 to 4 whole step. This has a very, very unique sound, and it is a bit of a stretch for your hand. So you want to be careful as you do this one to make sure that back here that your thumb stays very relaxed in your hold, and that you try to keep a nice open hand like this, where your fingers are nice and curved over the top and you have a nice curved hand. and also that your wrist stays nice and relaxed, kind of hanging beneath your fingers. If you can't do it right now without having a lot of tension in your hand, I would recommend to wait on this one until you've gotten very, very comfortable with the major finger pattern, the minor finger pattern, and the augmented fourth before you go into this whole tone one. So the note names for this one are A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, and E sharp is the same thing as F. If you've put your finger tapes down on the major scale, the way it would look is that 1 and 2 would fall on the tapes, and 3 and 4 would be higher than your tapes. So you have a high 3 and a high 4. Those 4 patterns are really considered the basis of music for the first position on the violin. The first position just meaning that you're in the lowest position on the violin, down here next to open string. You want to really focus on learning first position extremely well as a violin beginner. Think of it almost like the alphabet when you're learning how to read. When you first learn how to read, you learn, your ABCs, you learn all the different sounds, and you've got to get those super, super solid before you can actually begin fluently reading. Well, finger patterns are a little bit like that, where you want to get so comfortable with doing the major finger pattern, the minor finger pattern, the augmented third finger pattern, and this whole tone pattern before you start to try to move up into higher positions on the violin. If you learn these patterns very well now, it will pay off so much as you progress on the violin and as you move into more difficult technique later on. This is your foundation. This is where you want to begin. Now I'm going to add this one bonus finger pattern because I do think it's helpful to know this one, where you play with a low 1 and a low 4. So the pattern here is going to be half step, whole step, half step. And because you're starting with a half step, that means that your finger 1 will be very, very low, basically next to where open string is. So the note names of that one are A, which is, the open A string, then B flat, C, D, and E flat. In terms of your finger stickers, this one is kind of interesting because only one of your fingers would actually be on a sticker. It would be the 3 finger on D, and then 1 would be lower than the finger sticker. 2 is a low 2, so it's lower than where your sticker would be. And then your 4 would also be a little bit lower than the finger sticker. So those are the 5 different finger patterns. I challenge you, if you're a beginner, to learn and memorize all 5 of those patterns, and then that can be an amazing way to warm up every single day before you jump into practicing different songs. And this will only make you grow more and more confident on the violin. If you're looking for a great beginner violin at a budget price, I've also linked one that I have reviewed down below, so you can check it out there. And if you did enjoy this video, go ahead and like it. And also you can subscribe to my channel for much more content on how to play the violin and how to grow from a beginner to an advanced player on the violin.